Prisons around the world are meant to serve as institutions for reform and punishment, detaining those who have committed crimes against society. However, some of these facilities have become notorious for their brutality, overcrowding, and human rights abuses, often reflecting the darker aspects of the justice systems they operate within. This video delves into 5 of the world's most infamous prisons. These institutions are not just places of incarceration, but microcosms of violence, corruption, and survival against all odds. Evin Prison, Iran. Evin Prison, located in Tehran, Iran, is one of the most infamous prisons in the world, particularly known for its harsh treatment of political prisoners, dissidents, journalists, and intellectuals. Evin Prison was established in 1972 under the reign of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran. It initially served as a detention center for political prisoners. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the prison's use expanded under the new regime to include a broader range of political dissidents, including religious minorities, activists, and intellectuals. These inmates often face harsher conditions, including extended solitary confinement and more severe physical and psychological abuse. Evin Prison is known for severe overcrowding. Cells designed for a few inmates often house many more, leading to unsanitary and cramped conditions. Basic facilities are limited, and inmates often have to share toilets and showers with many others, which exacerbates the spread of diseases. The social structure within Evin Prison is complex, with political prisoners often forming tight-knit groups for mutual support. Corruption among prison guards and officials is rampant. Inmates or their families sometimes pay bribes for better conditions, food, or medical care. This corruption exacerbates inequality among inmates, with those unable to pay facing the worst conditions. Evin Prison has a notorious reputation for the systematic use of torture. Inmates have reported physical torture, including beatings, whippings, and electric shocks. Psychological torture is also prevalent, with methods such as prolonged solitary confinement, mock executions, and severe interrogations designed to break the spirit of inmates. There have been numerous reports of sexual abuse as tools of intimidation and punishment. Despite the harsh conditions, many political prisoners try to continue their activism from within the prison, smuggling out information and organizing protests. Medical care in Evin Prison is grossly inadequate. Inmates suffering from serious health conditions often do not receive proper medical attention. Inmates have reported being denied necessary medications and treatments. Many political prisoners and activists have died due to lack of medical care or delayed treatment. There is also a lack of mental health support, despite the high levels of trauma experienced by the inmates. The combination of physical abuse, psychological torture, and poor living conditions has a severe impact on the mental health of inmates. Many prisoners suffer from depression, anxiety, and PTSD. The lack of mental health support exacerbates these issues. Many inmates in Evin Prison face sham trials and are denied basic legal rights. Trials are often conducted in secret, and verdicts are predetermined. Appeals are rarely successful, and inmates have little hope of receiving justice through the legal system. Evin Prison has been the subject of widespread international condemnation. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have documented numerous abuses and called for reforms. Despite this, the Iranian government has largely denied or ignored these allegations. Evin Prison remains a symbol of the Iranian regime's repression and its use of incarceration as a tool to silence dissent and intimidate political opponents. Tadmor Military Prison, Syria. Tadmor Military Prison, often referred to as Tadmor Prison, is located in the ancient city of Palmyra in central Syria. It was originally constructed as a French military barracks during the French Mandate of Syria and was converted into a prison in the 20th century. Tadmor gained infamy for its brutal conditions and the extreme measures used to suppress inmates. Tadmor Military Prison is widely regarded as one of the most brutal and deadly prisons in the world. It became notorious for its severe human rights abuses, including widespread torture, summary executions, and inhumane living conditions. The prison was primarily used to detain political prisoners, dissidents, and those suspected of opposing the Syrian government. Tadmor was known for extreme overcrowding, with cells often holding many more inmates than their intended capacity. Basic facilities were minimal, and the infrastructure was dilapidated and unsanitary. Prisoners had limited access to clean water, sanitation, and basic necessities. Torture was rampant in Tadmor. Methods included beatings, electric shocks, prolonged suspension by the limbs, and sexual violence. Psychological torture was also prevalent, including threats of execution, mock executions, and solitary confinement in dark, cramped cells for extended periods. Inmates were often subjected to forced labor and other forms of physical and mental abuse. The daily routine at Tadmor was harsh and monotonous. Prisoners were subjected to long hours of confinement with minimal exercise or time outside their cells. Meals were sparse, nutritionally inadequate, and often contaminated. Inmates frequently suffered from malnutrition and related health issues. Food rations were used as a tool of control and punishment, with prisoners often being deprived of food as a form of coercion or discipline. Tadmor was infamous for its mass executions. One of the most notorious incidents occurred in June 1980, when hundreds of prisoners were killed in their cells following an assassination attempt on President Hafez al-Assad. Executions were often carried out without any formal trial or legal process, contributing to a climate of fear and hopelessness among inmates. Inmates at Tadmor had no access to legal representation or a fair trial. Many were detained without charge and held indefinitely. Appeals or requests for review of sentences were almost always ignored or denied. Medical care was virtually non-existent. Inmates suffering from illnesses or injuries were rarely provided with adequate treatment. Many prisoners died from preventable diseases or injuries due to the lack of medical attention and the unsanitary conditions. Mental health care was entirely absent, despite the severe psychological trauma inflicted on the prisoners. Tadmor Military Prison was closed in 2001, but it reopened during the Syrian Civil War. In 2015, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, captured Palmyra and destroyed parts of the prison, claiming to liberate its inmates. The prison's legacy, however, continues to symbolize the extreme brutality of the Syrian government's repression of dissent. Tadmor Military Prison remains one of the most notorious symbols of state repression and human rights abuses, exemplifying the extreme measures used by authoritarian regimes to maintain control and silence dissent. La Modelo, Colombia. La Modelo Prison, officially known as the National Model Prison, is one of the largest and most infamous prisons in Colombia. Established in the 1950s, it was originally intended to serve as a model of modern incarceration. However, over the decades, it has become notorious for its violence, overcrowding, and human rights abuses. La Modelo is widely recognized as one of the most dangerous and deadly prisons in the world. It is infamous for its brutal conditions, frequent riots, and the high level of violence both among inmates and between inmates and guards. La Modelo is severely overcrowded, often housing more than double its intended capacity. Cells designed for a few inmates frequently accommodate many more, leading to extremely cramped and unsanitary conditions. Basic facilities are inadequate. Inmates have limited access to clean water, sanitation, and proper sleeping arrangements. The infrastructure is old and poorly maintained, contributing to the harsh living environment. Violence is rampant in La Modelo. The prison is effectively divided between rival gangs who control different sections of the facility. These gangs engage in frequent and deadly clashes. Weapons, including firearms, knives, and makeshift weapons, are common within the prison. Inmates often arm themselves for protection or to assert control. Guards often have little control over the prison, with many areas being effectively governed by the gangs. The social structure within La Modelo is dominated by gang affiliations. Inmates must align themselves with a gang for protection and survival. The prison's violent and hierarchical social order contributes to a constant atmosphere of tension and fear. Reports of torture and abuse are common. Inmates are subjected to physical violence, extortion, and intimidation by both fellow prisoners and corrupt guards. Solitary confinement is used as a punishment, often for extended periods, exacerbating the psychological stress on inmates. The daily routine in La Modelo is harsh and monotonous. Inmates spend long hours in their overcrowded cells with minimal opportunities for exercise or recreation. Meals are of poor quality and often insufficient in quantity. Food is frequently contaminated, leading to malnutrition and health issues among inmates. Inmates rely heavily on food packages sent by their families to supplement their diet, though these are often subject to theft or extortion by other inmates or guards. Medical care is grossly inadequate. Inmates suffering from illnesses or injuries frequently do not receive proper medical attention. Outbreaks of infectious diseases are common due to the overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. Inmates often suffer from untreated illnesses and poor overall health. Mental health care is virtually non-existent, despite the high levels of trauma and psychological distress among inmates. Corruption is rampant among prison staff. Inmates or their families often pay bribes for better conditions, access to food or medical care. Corruption exacerbates inequality among inmates, with those unable to pay facing the worst conditions and treatment. One of the most infamous incidents occurred in March 2020, when a riot broke out over fears of a COVID-19 outbreak. The ensuing violence left 23 inmates dead and over 80 injured. Frequent riots and clashes between rival gangs have resulted in numerous deaths and injuries over the years. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have condemned the conditions in La Modelo and called for reforms. Despite international pressure, meaningful improvements have been slow, and conditions remain dire for the inmates. La Modelo Prison remains one of the most dangerous and brutal correctional facilities in the world, symbolizing the severe challenges facing the Colombian prison system and the broader issues of violence, corruption, and human rights abuses in the country. San Pedro Prison, Bolivia. San Pedro Prison, officially known as San Pedro de la Paz, is the largest prison in La Paz, Bolivia. Unlike most traditional prisons, San Pedro operates more like a small, self-contained town, with its own social structure, economy, and governance largely controlled by the inmates themselves. Established in the 1890s, it has evolved into one of the most unusual and notorious prisons in the world. San Pedro Prison is infamous for its unique internal system, where inmates must purchase or rent their cells, and are responsible for their own food, security, and daily activities. The prison is known for its violence, corruption, and drug trafficking, making it a dangerous place for those incarcerated within its walls. San Pedro operates with a high degree of autonomy from official prison authorities. Inmates elect leaders who manage the internal affairs of the prison. Cells must be purchased or rented, often at significant cost. Wealthier inmates can afford more comfortable accommodations, while poorer inmates live in overcrowded and squalid conditions. The prison has its own economy, with shops, restaurants, and even informal banks run by inmates. Money is crucial for survival, as prisoners must pay for everything from their cells to food and medical care. Violence is a constant threat in San Pedro. Gangs exert significant control, and conflicts between rival groups often lead to deadly clashes. Inmates must navigate a complex social hierarchy, with those lacking resources or connections being particularly vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Weapons are common, and security is often lax, with guards relying on inmate leaders to maintain order. San Pedro is notorious for its drug trade, particularly cocaine production and trafficking. Inmates manufacture and sell drugs within the prison and to the outside world. The drug trade fuels corruption and violence, as rival groups vie for control of the lucrative business. Inmates' daily routines vary widely depending on their financial resources. Wealthier inmates can afford more comfortable lifestyles, while poorer inmates struggle to survive. Food must be purchased from inmate-run shops and restaurants, leading to significant disparities in diet and nutrition. Malnutrition and hunger are common among those who lack funds. Daily life involves a mix of survival activities, work, both legitimate and illicit, and efforts to maintain personal security. The social structure is complex and stratified, with power and influence often determined by wealth and connections. Inmates form alliances and networks for protection and support, but betrayal and violence are constant risks. Uniquely, some inmates' families live inside the prison with them. Wives and children can stay with incarcerated family members, leading to a community-like environment within the prison walls. This arrangement allows for a semblance of family life, but also exposes women and children to the dangers and harsh conditions of prison life. Corruption is rampant, with guards and officials often accepting bribes to allow contraband, provide preferential treatment, or turn a blind eye to illegal activities. Inmates with money can buy better living conditions, protection, and even influence over prison affairs. Medical care is inadequate and often only available to those who can afford to pay for it. Many inmates suffer from untreated illnesses and injuries. Mental health support is virtually non-existent despite the high levels of stress and trauma experienced by the inmates. San Pedro has experienced numerous violent incidents, including riots and clashes between rival gangs, resulting in deaths and injuries. The prison's role in drug trafficking has drawn significant attention from law enforcement and international observers. San Pedro Prison remains one of the most unusual and dangerous correctional facilities in the world, symbolizing the extreme challenges of managing a penal system where inmates largely control their own fate amidst violence, corruption, and economic disparity. Gitarama Prison, Rwanda. Gitarama Prison, now officially known as Muhanga Central Prison, is one of the most notorious prisons in Rwanda. Originally designed to hold a few hundred inmates, it became infamous during the aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide. The prison's population swelled massively as thousands of suspected genocide perpetrators were detained, leading to extreme overcrowding and dire conditions. Gitarama Prison is widely regarded as one of the most brutal and inhumane prisons in the world. It has earned a notorious reputation for severe overcrowding, appalling living conditions, lack of medical care, and extreme violence among inmates. The social structure within Gitarama is dominated by a survival of the fittest mentality. Inmates form alliances and groups for protection and access to resources. Corruption is rampant, with those who have money or connections able to bribe guards for better conditions or privileges. The extreme overcrowding and dire conditions during the post-genocide period led to numerous deaths from disease, starvation, and violence. Reports of cannibalism and extreme human rights abuses have drawn significant international attention and condemnation. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have documented the severe abuses and inhumane conditions in Gitarama, calling for urgent reforms. Despite international pressure, meaningful improvements have been slow, and conditions remain dire for the inmates. Gitarama Prison remains one of the most dangerous and brutal correctional facilities in the world, symbolizing the severe challenges of managing a penal system overwhelmed by overcrowding, violence, and lack of basic human rights. The stories of some of these prisons are stark reminders of the harsh realities faced by inmates in some of the world's most notorious detention facilities. These prisons are characterized by severe overcrowding, violence, corruption, and a lack of basic human rights. Despite international condemnation and calls for reform, conditions in these prisons remain dire, reflecting broader issues within their respective justice systems. Understanding the grim realities of these institutions underscores the urgent need for change and the protection of human rights for all individuals, regardless of their circumstances.